The morning I opened my bank app and saw a new autopay relocation stipend. $1,000 was the same morning a fresh for sale sign appeared in my yard, and my house key no longer turned. At 68, I didn't beg or break. I inhaled, felt the price they'd put on my life, and let the anger cool into something sharper. I photographed the sign, screenshotted the charge, laid my deed on the table with the raised county seal, and told my daughter, evenly, from now on, put everything in writing. That was just the opening move, because when you ask for proof, the story people tell about you starts to collapse. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and tell me where you're watching from. And if this hits close to home, drop a 1 in the comments. I woke to the soft June light pooling over Westlake Hills, the kind that turns cedar and limestone the color of old paper. I brewed coffee the way I always do, spoon kettle, the chipped mug my husband bought at a church sale, then opened my bank app before my second sip. A new line sat at the top of the activity list, neat and confident as a label on a storage bin, $1,000 relocation stipend. Month 1. Below it, a shared spreadsheet pinged my email, Mom Budget. The subject line was smiling, so you don't have to worry. I set the mug down and watched a ring of brown written on the coaster, as if the house itself were absorbing the news. The sheet opened to tidy columns and pastel bars. Medication $280, transit $60, groceries $300, mobile $50, smisk. My days were squares, my choices stacked like canned soup on a sale aisle. There was even a note in a cheerful font. We've automated bills for you, Mom, so nothing falls through the cracks. Somewhere between senior discounts and haircuts quarterly, I felt my life priced by the ounce. I called my daughter. She answered on the second ring, voice warm like a blanket you didn't ask for. This is to help you, Mom, Myra said. Austin is expensive. It's easier if we keep things simple. Just relax. We've got it. Her we wasn't royal. It was managerial. I let the silence hold. In it, I could hear her keyboard, her calendar, her certainty. I thanked her for thinking of me and asked when we had discussed automation. We talked around it, she said brightly. You've sounded overwhelmed. I did not argue. I have learned that outrage spends fast and proves little. Instead, I took screenshots, the autopay memo, the spreadsheet header, the cute little heart next to housing. I filed them in a folder I had made for storms I hoped never to see. House Proof 2025-62908. In the notes field, I typed, initiated without consent. Order steadied my hands the way a railing steadies knees. I sent one text to my granddaughter. Natalie, Grandma needs you this week. She answered a minute later, a small bell of kindness I'm around after 4 Nana. Want me to stop by? I typed only yes. Thank you. Then I muted my thread with Myra. Quiet is not surrender. Sometimes it is a room where evidence dries. From the desk drawer, I pulled the deed. The paper still had the faint smell of toner and courthouse dust, and the raised seal of Travis County caught the window light like a coin. My name, my full patient name was there, in block letters that never once wavered. I laid the deed atop the red binder that holds taxes and warranties and the tiny certificate for the live oak I planted the year my husband died. Paper does not love you back, but it does not gaslight you either. Another message slid in from Myra. Budgeting tips, cancel cable. Streaming is fine, sell the piano too big. I'll send a link for the senior bus pass. She added a smile I could not hear. I wrote one sentence and let it sit on its own line. Please put everything in writing. Then I muted the thread again and finished my coffee cold. I checked the calendar in the corner of my screen, Monday, June 2nd, 2025. There is comfort in a date. It pins the feeling down so it cannot claim to be a dream later. No power of attorney had ever left my hands. No conversation had ended with a yes. The only agreement was a daughter's assumption wearing a silk bow. I opened my password manager, saved the bank screenshots again, then printed the autopay page to PDF and to paper both. Digital can disappear. Paper resists revision. In the quiet after the printer coughed, I walked a slow circuit of the rooms. I photographed the scuffs at the baseboard we never painted over the dent on the laundry door from a dropped toolbox, the stain in the garage where the old Buick used to leak. I slid last month's water bill into the red binder behind the deed. I labeled a fresh tab, proof of occupancy in neat block letters I learned at my first office job in 1978. There is a steadiness in doing things the long way. Across the creek, a mower droned. The cicadas began their afternoon chorus. Myra texted another list. We'll ship extra books to Goodwill. No need for all those binders. I replied with the same sentence as before and nothing else. There are times a woman my age is expected to perform gratitude. I have no interest in performing anything. I am not an actress. I am a witness. Before lunch, I walked to the curb for the mail. The hill smelled of sun-baked bark and sprinkler mist, and somewhere a dog barked at a squirrel that would not come down. Inside the box, between the electric bill and a lawn service coupon, a glossy flyer slapped my fingers. Open House Weekend. It read with a pretty photo of a white brick ranch on a shady corner. The porch light in the photo was crooked in the same way mine has been since the freeze. The front steps bore the same hairline crack. The curtains at the big window, my curtains folded into the same quiet V. I held the paper up to the street and watched my own eaves grin back at me like a mask someone else was trying on. I turned the flyer over. No address, just a QR code, and a lender ad promising right sizing made easy. The photo kept tugging angle of the mailbox, the faint bend of the live oak's lowest limb. I traced the porch light with my thumb. It felt like someone had copied my handwriting. Truly. 10 minutes after the flyer, a neighbor texted me an MLS link with a single line. Is this your place? One tap and my bedroom filled the phone, my blue quilt smoothed too neat, the lamp that throws a warm oval on the wall, the dented trunk I've had since 1974. The caption called the house a tidy downsizer with mature oaks. I studied every photo in slow, narrow breaths. The kitchen light, I replaced myself, the hairline crack in the step, the crooked porch fixture all rendered cheerful for strangers. Even my coffee cup sat obediently on the counter as if I had been edited out and the cup had learned to live without me. I stepped outside. Fresh signposts bit the soil near the mailbox, white post glossy panel, an arrow toward my front door for sale. The plastic still smelled of ink. A shoe print I did not recognize pressed the St. Augustine by the walk. I set my phone low, mid, and high, took photos from 3 angles, and let the timestamp burn in the corner like a tiny witness. Cars rolled by. No one looked. Public things can happen to you in full daylight and feel like a whisper behind your back. At the door, my key snagged, slipped, then turned air. I tried again, slow to fast, then backward like an old safe. Nothing. Blue tape held a printed notice over the knob, notice of access by listing agent. Contact number below. My face looked back at me in the glass, small and steadied. I pressed my palm flat against the panel just to feel the house through the paint, the way you touch a loved one's sleeve when words would be too much. I called the number. Voicemail. I left a clear message, my name, the street, the date, the time to the minute. I requested the written authorization they claim exists, the listing agreement bearing my signature, and any power of attorney they believe they hold. I reminded the agent that entry without the owner's consent is not staging, it is trespass. I spoke as if reading minutes into a record because one day a record might be exactly what this becomes. Then I called my daughter. Mom, we've been through this. Myra said, voice silked with patience I didn't ask for. You signed last month. Don't you remember this is safer? The market's perfect. We'll find you somewhere easier. I kept my eyes on the porch light screw that never tightens and answered the way I wish more daughters allowed mothers to answer. Put everything in writing. She pivoted to lullabies about stress and forgetting. I said the sentence again slower and ended the call before the conversation turned into a maze she could win by tone alone. Control, I have learned, is a muscle. I used it. I hired a locksmith. He arrived in a plain van, no chatter work boots, dark with dust. I showed him my driver's license, utility bill, and deed with the raised county seal. He snapped a photo of each and of my face beside the address. He pointed at the strike plate. "Receyed this morning," he said. "Different brand cylinder." He removed the new core, installed a set I purchased from him, and photographed the before and after with my phone as well as his. I paid by card and asked the invoice to read exactly "Emergency Recey owner. Presented ID." He nodded, printed, signed. Back at the desk, I opened a fresh folder, House Proof 2025-0603. I renamed every file with date, time, street, no spaces, discipline, shows up even in file names. MLSpage.pdf, sign nearbox 10107.jpg, door notice 123 JPG, Recey invoice 1242 to PDF. I printed the listing page and the sign photos and fed them to the red binder behind the tab I made yesterday. I added a one-page timeline and left 3 blank lines at the bottom. Blank lines pull truth forward. The kettle clicked. I poured tea, set the deed atop the binder like a paper weight that means what it says, and texted one line to Myra. All further actions in writing. No emojis, no mothering softeners to make a hard thing comfortable. In the quiet, I walked the hall again, touching the nail heads and the paint runs I never sanded out. The house felt the way an old hymn sounds when you don't sing, but you still mouth the words. The agent called back while I was rinsing the cup. "We have documentation," her voicemail said, light as weather. "Your daughter is handling this for you. Thank you." No attachment, no dates. People who truly have authority tend to lead with it. People who don't tend to lead with tone. I saved the voicemail as an audio file and emailed it to myself with the subject, "Hold for counsel." By late afternoon, the light turned. That kind of gold Texas saves for itself. I slid the new keys on a ring, locked and unlocked each door twice, then put one key in the freezer bag I keep for important spares. I set a small chair by the front window and watched the sign out on the lawn, listed degree in the breeze. Across the street, the neighbor rolled his trash bin and pretended not to stare. It's a small humiliation being turned into a listing before you've even left the room. My phone bloomed with a fresh subject line from the HOA group. "Congratulations to Myra for managing Mom's sale and memory care transition." The words arranged my life into a caption without asking me for the photo. I did not open it. Not yet. There are times to speak and times to gather breath. I let the screen dim, then blacken, and held the phone until the warmth left it. I am not erased. I am writing. Tomorrow I will answer, and my signature will lead. I opened the HOA email before the kettle clicked. The subject line congratulated my daughter for managing Mom's sale and memory care transition, as if my name were a rumor and my house a project. I read it twice slowly. The phrasing had a soft sheen, all comfort words and gentle authority, the kind used when people talk over you. My finger hovered, then I scrolled. Neighbors chimed in with hearts and thumbs. Myra's name sat in bold as the contact. I set the phone flat on the table and breathed through the quiet sting. Facts first, I told myself. Facts, not volume. I clicked reply and put my name at the top, just like the bank taught me years ago, Noreen Callahan, homeowner, 312 Sycamore. I wrote that no consent had been given to list or sell my property, that I was not under any transition plan, and that the board should avoid medical assumptions about any resident. I asked for the source of the claim and any documents they believed authorized third-party control. Short sentences, dates, no adjectives. I ended with a request, "Please direct all future communications to me in writing at this email address." Then I read it again, trimmed 2 extra words, and pressed send. Attachments matter. I opened my proof folder and pulled a clean image of the deed where my name meets the raised county seal. I added yesterday's time-stamped photos of the for sale sign in my yard, north, south, and street angles, and the locksmith's invoice with the line owner presented ID. I labeled each file with the date, time, and address, then attached and sent. Paperwork is slow thunder. You don't hear it at first, but it changes the air. Maura, our HOA president, wrote back with a careful tone that read like a hand on my elbow. "Noreen, We were informed by your daughter that she is assisting with your safety and transition, and we support families at times like these. A neighbor added, prayers for clarity, then a smiley that missed the point. I watched the thread grow polite and wrong. I kept my hand still. Anger wastes evidence. My last public line for the day was brief. Please direct all communications about 312 Sycamore to me in writing. Medical speculation about residents can create liability for the association. I signed it with my full name, lot number, and phone. Then I closed the thread. The house felt a notch quieter after that, as if it had been waiting for me to put my name back in the doorway. Next, I called my primary care clinic and asked for the soonest cognitive and capacity evaluation. The nurse recognized my name and found a cancellation for Friday morning. I took it spelled my email twice and wrote the appointment on a sticky note that went straight into the red binder under a tab I labeled Capacity. I set a reminder on my phone and copied the details into a paper calendar because ink still calms me. When I closed the binder, the click of the rings felt like a small oath. Natalie rang while the kettle finally hissed. Her voice has the steadiness of a lighthouse. I gave her the short version, no theater, just the thread, the sign, the locks, the clinic on Friday. She listened cleanly. "Grandma, I'm here," she said. I asked her to save everything she saw or heard, to forward nothing to group chats, and to avoid online arguments. Facts only, I said. "Yes, ma'am," she answered, a smile tucked in the words. We ended the call on a breath we counted together. Evening folded over the porch. I printed the HOA emails and slid them behind the deed copy, then brewed tea and stood at the window. The sign still leaned in the last light like a stranger's suitcase parked on my grass. I didn't cry. The house and I share a spine. When one of us stiffens, the other remembers how. I turned off the kitchen light and listened to the air settle into ordinary sounds. Ice maker, soft duck sigh at a car down the hill. Ordinary can be armor. My phone buzzed once. A text from Natalie. Got something. A link sat under it, then an audio file. I put the phone on the table, pressed play, and turned up the volume one notch. The cafe clatter came first, then my daughter's voice, bright enough for strangers to hear. "Escrow will clear. Friday Mom won't even notice." The next voice laughed and said something about timing before holidays. I paused, backed up 3 seconds, and played it again, then once more, with my thumb steady, so I would not record my own breath on the screen. I saved the file to the proof folder and wrote a note on the red binder, Audio Myra Escrow Friday. Relief and fury braided into a single rope I could hold on to. At last, a clock. I sat down and opened my calendar. Tomorrow would be for counsel in person with the binder on the desk between us and the audio file queued. I set alarms, charged my phone, and placed the deed copy on top once more so its seal caught the lamplight. Then I washed my cup, turned the sign's view into a rectangle of closed curtains, and let the house rest with me, while the recording sentence looped in memory each pass, sharpening my resolve. Escrow will clear Friday, and I will be there first. I opened a blank page and typed a 1-paragraph statement I could paste anywhere if rumors multiplied. Under it, I listed 3 questions in bold pen: who authorized access, which escrow officer, what buyer name. I printed 2 copies, slid one into the binder, and taped the other inside the hall closet. I laid out a jacket flats and a calm voice. Then I set 2 alarms. Downtown traffic moved like a patient river as my red binder rode shotgun. I took the elevator up with the steadiness I had practiced all week. I hadn't come to retell hurt. I had come to correct the record. The elder law office smelled of paper and citrus. The receptionist glanced up, professional. "Good morning. ID and anything for scanning before you meet with Asha." I slid my license and laid each piece like Brick's deed. Copy photos of the sign, the locksmith invoice marked owner presented ID printouts of the HOA thread, and a small USB holding Natalie's audio. Pages flashed across the scanner's light. Timestamps appeared like quiet witnesses. Initial for privacy, and here for limited authorization so Ms. Patel can request records, she said. I initialed. Asha opened the conference room door herself. "Walk me through this in order," she said, "and show me what you've kept." I began with the auto-pay memo. then the listing photos. The Rekey noticed the HOA email, and finally the audio clip. When the last page lay flat, she leaned back. "Here's what I'm seeing," she said. "Risk of elder financial abuse, interference with property rights, and an association making medical insinuations that can create liability. You are clear and organized. We'll match that with paper." We built the binder. Tabs slid into place with soft clicks. Evidence capacity. Title HOA Bank Communications. Under evidence, she placed the deed copy, the signed photos, the locksmith invoice, and a transcript of the audio with metadata. Under capacity, she added tomorrow's appointment sheet with my primary care physician, 9:15 a.m., and a blank labeled Letter of Capacity. Title held a demand draft to the listing agent, provide seller authorization, listing agreement, and identity verification tied to, "Do you have a power of attorney?" anywhere, she asked. "No." She nodded and added a draft labeled Revocation of Power of Attorney readied in case someone tried to conjure one. If a document surfaces, she said, "We file this the same day." She drew a clean sheet and wrote a numbered list. "Roadmap," she said. 1, keep tomorrow's appointment and obtain a capacity letter. 2, today, we email Title and Escrow to request their remote online notarization and identity verification logs, plus the chain of signatures on any listing or sale documents. 3, if a sale proceeds without your authorization, we send a hold funds request to Escrow. 4, if misrepresentation continues, we prepare a list pendens to Cloud Title, and if needed, a temporary... I breathed easier. "Good," I said. "Let's begin." She drafted. I read. The demand to the listing agent was clinical. The HOA letter cited their own policy against medical statements in minutes and asked that they correct the record. The bank email was polite but firm, asking the branch to place a review flag and to confirm in writing that no new accounts or loans could be opened without my in-person appearance. A knock. Natalie stepped in with 2 coffee's eyes to me first. Grandma. She handed Asha her phone, original file. Asha connected it, saved the audio to a labeled folder, printed the waveform and metadata, and asked Natalie to email herself a copy and archive the text that delivered it. Chain of custody documented. "We stay off social media," Asha said. "Facts only save 2 places. No online fights. If someone tries to bait you, let me read it first." Natalie nodded. I squared the tab dividers. From my laptop on the firm's network, I sent 3 emails. To the listing agent, a request for every scrap of authority they believe allows a sign in my yard and a lock change on my doors. To Title and Escrow, a request for notary and identity logs tied to my name and address, including any remote online notarization audit trails. To the HOA, a notice of potential liability and a request that all future communications about my property or health be directed to me in writing. Asha watched the outbox clear. "One more thing," she said. "If your daughter or her agent invites you to tour an apartment, say yes. Take photos. Keep brochures. It documents intent and timing." I understood. We would collect, not argue. The receptionist returned with copies and a fresh red pen. I signed where Asha pointed. We set a check-in for Monday. Tomorrow, she said, tapping the capacity tab, we anchor your voice to paper. I closed the binder and felt its weight change. In the elevator, my reflection held a red rectangle. I pictured the porch light from that listing burning for strangers. Back in the car, I reconfirmed my appointment. "We'll see you at 9:15, the nurse said. I drove home through bright noon, set the binder on the dining table, and brewed tea in the small pot Natalie used to claim after school. I texted her a single line, "Thank you." She replied with a heart and a calendar. Afternoon settled. I created a new folder on my desktop, House Proof June, and moved the day's files inside. Automated acknowledgments chimed back. I printed each one and slid them into their tabs. The house sounded like itself, again the air conditioner's hum and a neighbor's mower. Tomorrow is for numbers questions and a signature from a physician who knows my name. Tonight is for quiet. I set my phone face down, drew the binder an inch closer, and let its red be the steady thing in a day determined to knock me sideways. Plan felt steady. I signed my name on the clinic clipboard, the blue pen scratching quietly above the date June 6th. The nurse called me Ms. Walsh, clipped a pulse ox to my finger, and read the time aloud as she wrote it, 9:12 a.m. She asked about allergies, about the morning pills I take with toast, about whether I'd driven myself. Yes, I said, and she nodded like that mattered. My pulse pulsed green on the little screen. In the corner of the intake form, she circled capacity letter requested, then placed a yellow flag on the chart so the doctor wouldn't miss it. Nothing dramatic, only adults doing adult things at the right pace. Dr. Klein walked in with a tablet and a plain, unhurried hello. He asked me to repeat 3 words to draw a clock face, reading 10 past 11, and to count backward by sevens. He asked the kind of questions that test the edges without insulting the center. I told him my address, the mayor's name, and the route I take around the lake when my knees are kind. He reviewed my medications, clicked through labs, and asked for consent to issue a letter, documenting decision-making capacity. "We'll keep it factual," he said. "You deserve paper, not whispers." I agreed. The letter printed on heavy paper clinic seal embossed at the bottom like a dime pressed into snow. He signed in blue, handed 1 copy to me, and sent a PDF directly to my attorney's secure inbox. The nurse slid my copy into a manila envelope. In the parking lot breeze, I opened my red binder at the capacity tab and placed the letter inside. The ring snapped shut with a clean click. I sat a moment with my hands on the cover until the tremor that had lived there all week finally went quiet. At noon, I ate a small bowl of soup in my kitchen and checked email. Asha's message sat at the top, preliminary audit log from title Escrow attached. Suggest quick review together. I called her. We agreed on 1 o'clock with the document open on speaker. I rinsed the bowl, set the binder on the table, and lined up a pen and notepad and my clinic receipt. I expected sloppiness, misspelled names, a loose date. I did not expect geometry that would ask a human body to be in 2 cities at once. At 1, we opened the Ron audit log. The screen read like a flight manifest session start verification notary join stamp applied. Next to my name, the platform listed present from 9:18 to 9:24 a.m., IP geolocated to Dallas, Texas. The notary's seal number and server ID were tidy in their rows. My eyes went to the corner of my own intake, form 9:12 a.m., pulse ox on finger, 9:45 a.m. exam completed Austin, Texas. Asha was silent a long beat. Noreen, she said, we have a discrepancy that is not subjective. This is math. You were in one room while someone told a computer you were in another. The line felt colder than the clinic air. Asha drafted while I listened to the soft clack of her keyboard through the phone. The subject line read, discrepancy notice and demand for chain of authority. We cited the clinic timestamps, the audit log times the Dallas IP, and requested complete identity verification artifacts, the KBA questions, credential images, notary journal entries, and the video. We added the phrase potential identity misattribution and a request to hold funds if any sale proceeds attempted to close under the challenged record. She read the draft aloud once more, and I approved it with a single yes. At 1:37, Myra texted, "Be ready at 2. Care residences at Barton Creek. I'll drive. You'll love it, pool chef game nights." I typed, "I'll be ready." Then I set my phone so a single tap would start recording, tucked my notepad into my purse, and added a small folder for brochures. I wrote a short list, asked for move-in specials, referral codes, staff names, the license on the wall. No debates, no public scenes. I would collect information the way a gardener collects cuttings quietly with purpose labeling after I got home. Before I left, I photographed the clinic letter, the first page of the audit log, and my receipt with today's date. I named each file with the format I trust, 2025-06-06 hours time short label, and slid the phone back into its case. The binder looked orderly under the kitchen light tabs like small flags. Evidence capacity title HO Bank Communications. I closed each ring with my fingertips, then pressed the cover flat and listened to the house breathing around me like it had when my husband was alive. The day narrowed into edges, the clock over the stove, the line of shoes by the door, the quiet road outside that has never once asked me to explain myself. My calendar chimed 1:45 leave time. I set the binder by the door where the sun makes a small, bright square on the rug. I checked for keys for wallet for the envelope with the embossed seal that proves my mind is my own. At 1:59, I heard tires whisper at the curb. I lifted the binder, locked the door from the inside, and tucked the key into my pocket out of habit, even though locks have been less certain than laws lately. Whatever the afternoon tried to stage, I would keep it on paper. Facts, names, numbers time. I paused on the top step and let the heat settle over my shoulders, counting the seconds until the horn reminding myself that patience was not surrender, it was strategy. And today the record would carry the weight I refused to place on my throat. I steadied my breath and watched cloud drift past live oaks. Myra's tires whispered at 1:59. I stepped to the curb with a pen, a pocket notebook, and my phone set to start recording with one tap. She leaned across the console to pop the lock. "Peace of mind, Mom," she said, cheerful as a travel ad. I fastened my seatbelt and watched the dashboard clock. I named my tools in my head notebook recorder and kept my breath steady. Observation first, reactions later. The lobby smelled of lemon polish and new carpet. A concierge offered water while a woman with a sales director badge appeared as if we'd been penciled into her day. Noreen Myra. "Welcome to Care Residences at Barton Creek," she sang. "We do have availability in our memory care wing." I wrote the time on my pad, 2:14 p.m., and let the comment pass without friction. A brochure slid over soft words for hard things. We walked a bright hallway lined with framed watercolors and closed doors. Past a community room, my thumb grazed the record button. The red dot bloomed and waited. On a bulletin board, a placard caught the light. Resident referral credit $1,000. "We love when families help other families," the director said. I nodded, wrote the phrase, and drew a small dollar sign. I was finished being priced. Now I was simply counting. In a glass-walled conference room, an intake coordinator arranged 3 sheets and a fan. "Rates vary by care level," she said, tapping columns. "Studio starts at $48.50 per month. Auto debit makes it seamless. We usually ask a family member to complete the packet." Myra slid into the opening. "I'll handle the paperwork. Mom has a fixed stipend anyway." The coordinator set a white card on the table. "Use this referral code today and there's a $1,000 credit on the first month." The same number, the same shape of control. I wrote referral code and boxed it. "We'll need a power of attorney or signed consent to hold a unit," the coordinator added. Myra reached toward her tote. I placed one card of my own on the table. "All documents go through my attorney." I did not raise my voice. The room didn't need volume. It needed direction. The smile held. "Of course. We can email her." I slid the white card toward my side. No one took it back. Myra nudged a 1-page hold form toward me, the pen traveling with it like a tugboat. I capped my pen and returned both to the center line. "Council will review." A tiny storm crossed her face and cleared. "We're just trying to keep this moving," she said, a brittle laugh following half a beat late. "Motion is not the same as consent." I asked for a printed pricing grid with today's date. The coordinator initialed the bottom right corner. I photographed the referral poster and the table card, angling to avoid my reflection in the glass. In my notebook, I wrote the first names on the badges and brief notes on their roles. Artifacts first. Opinions could wait. They showed us a staged studio, a narrow bed with a knit throw-a tray with fake tea, a window framing live oaks, and a slice of sky. On the dresser sat a welcome packet, a calendar of themed days, a menu, and an ACH form already highlighted. "Families appreciate automatic payments," the director said, tapping the yellow stripes. I traced the highlight with my eyes and memorized the bank fields routing account draft date. A small sign on the nightstand read, "We handle the details so you can rest." I photographed nothing here. I wrote down the exact sentence and the font that sold it. We were back in the car at 3:41. Heat lifted off the windshield in pale waves. Myra tapped her screen and a man's voice filled the cabin. "We're still good for 4, the listing agent said. "Just need the seller confirmation call." Title's pressing me on it. Myra glanced at me like a teacher waiting on a recitation. I looked at the time and opened a new note typing the words as he spoke seller confirmation 4 o'clock. I texted Asha agent on speaker, says 4 p.m. confirmation. I have the referral code poster photo pricing grid with initials. Her reply arrived before the call ended. Administrative hold on funds requested at 3:08. If they push, we file. Do not sign. I'm on standby. So, Myra said lightly, you saw how nice it is. You'd have friends' activities, real meals. I watched the blinker click. When legal has finished, we'll discuss housing, I said. She pressed her lips and raised the radio by 2 notches. The song talked about summer. I wrote the title anyway. At home, I set the referral card on my desk and filed the pricing grid under the Evidence tab. I transferred the hallway photo, the conference room card, and the audio clip of the budgeting talk into a folder labeled Apartment Tour 0606. File names ended with the time. The directory looked like a small, orderly town. My phone lit with Asha's follow-up funds hold acknowledged by Escrow. Any confirmation attempt without me triggers the next step. I breathed in and let the air go all the way down. Myra texted a heart and then a thumbs up. I muted the thread and set the phone face down. The house felt steady around me as if it had been listening all day. We turned onto my street at 10 till 4, the sign in my yard casting a thin blade of shade. I unlocked the door from the inside and stood a moment in the entry. The red binder waited on the desk open to a clean page for the next record. The clock ticked once, and the room held still like a witness taking an oath. At 3:50 p.m., I set my phone on the kitchen table, hit record, and opened the red binder to the Communications tab. A yellow sticky note read, "Right, don't argue." Outside, the oak threw slow shadows across the porch, where the for sale sign still stood like a finger wagging in public. I wrote the time in neat block letters, then rested the pen so it wouldn't click on the audio. Breathing in for 4, out for 6, I let the room settle. The clock over the sink hummed. No speeches, I reminded my... At 4:01 p.m., the phone rang. I slid to answer and said, Noreen speaking. A man introduced himself as the listing agent, voice brisk words, stacked like boxes. Thanks for picking up. We just need a quick seller confirmation call so we don't lose the buyer at close of business. 2 minutes. Simple yes that you're on board. I require all communications in writing to my counsel, I said at an even pace. Please email the authority documents you're relying on. He chuckled like I had offered a joke. Ma'am, I appreciate that, but we're up against a deadline. If we miss it, the earnest money could be at risk, and the buyer might walk. Your power of attorney on file. Myra already authorized the listing and the escrow. This is just a courtesy check. My pen stayed still. Kindly email that power of attorney and any notarial or audit logs that support it. Send them to my counsel. I won't be confirming by phone. A beat of air through his teeth. I'm trying to help Ms. Noreen. We've all worked hard to set your transition up. The buyer is expecting keys. We just need you to be flexible. My requirement stands, I said, in writing, to counsel. He exhaled hard, then softened his tone. All right, I can respect that. What's the best email for your attorney I conferenced Asha in? Her hello was calm iron. Counsel here. For the record, this call is being recorded. A hold on funds was requested earlier today, and any transmission of disputed authority may constitute conversion. Please send the entire authority chain you say you have, including any notarizations and RON audit logs. Until then, no phone confirmations from our client. Silence, then a quick, understood. I'll email what we received. He hung up before his voice admitted anything more. The kitchen felt larger once the line died. I stopped the recording, saved it with the date and time, then watched my inbox. Minutes later, Mr. Ortega from Escrow replied to the thread Asha had started hours before. We acknowledge an administrative hold pending verification of authority and identity. No disbursements will be made, absent resolution. I printed the email to PDF, printed a hard copy, hole punched it, and slid it under title Escrow. Paper settling into rings sounded like a latch closing. Myra's texts arrived in a fast column bubbles climbing the screen. "You're ruining everything. I lined up care because you needed it. Do you even know what you're doing?" I typed one sentence and sent it twice once to be sure she saw it. "Please put everything in writing to counsel." Then I muted the thread and turned the phone face down so I wouldn't watch the next flare. I called Natalie. She answered on the first ring. "I saw he called," she said. "You okay?" "I'm steady," I said. "Archive anything you see posted tonight." No replies. "We lead with documents." "Copy," she said. "Grandma, I'm proud of you." The house dimmed toward evening. I rinsed a teacup and set water to boil, then gathered the day into order. The morning capacity letter, the audit log discrepancy from yesterday, the card with the referral code from the tour today's recording. I labeled a fresh sheet timeline and drew straight lines from each item with arrows and times. The quiet wasn't empty. It was lined with steps I could point to. At 8:42 p.m., a new email landed with a bright little chime. Subject line, "Only no attachments yet. Executed limited POA seller Noreen envelope ID DXS 7741. I read it twice then, forwarded to Asha with one sentence, "Envelope ID received." No docs attached. I highlighted the subject with a yellow pen on my printout and wrote the time beside it. I stood at the window for a moment. The porch light lifted a weak halo off the signpost. Someone somewhere had decided my name could be borrowed and my signature could be simulated by software, and hurry, they were wrong. I pressed my thumb to the raised county seal on the deed where it lay under the lamp, then closed the binder with a gentle thud. My dignity was not a negotiation. It was a ledger balanced by patience and proof. Before bed, I checked the locks I had paid to change and set my phone to Do Not Disturb, except for Asha and Natalie. I left the recorder app open on the home screen so I would only need one tap in the morning. On the counter, the red binder weighted like a packed suitcase. In the margin of the timeline sheet, I wrote tomorrow's first line, 9:00 a.m., trace the DocuSign trail. I turned off the kitchen light and let the clock over the sink be the last sound. The house breathed with me in the dark. No speeches, no scenes, just the next right step held ready in my hands. I set an alarm for 8:00, laid a pen across the binder, and tucked the envelope ID note under a paperclip so it would be the first thing I saw. Tomorrow would not be louder. It would be clearer. I would follow the numbers to the hands that typed my name and ask the law to turn on the light. Coffee steadied my hands more than it warmed them. I opened the red binder on my kitchen table and typed last night's envelope ID into the compliance portal Asha sent. A button appeared. Certificate of completion and a tidy page unfolded columns, timestamps, device tags, every breadcrumb someone hoped I'd never see. Signer email noreen.homecare+1@gmail.com. I don't own that address. SMS 2FA, a number I don't recognize. Time window 8:59:9, 26 a.m. yesterday. IP geolocation Frisco, Texas, 200 miles north, while I sat in my clinic with a pulse ox on my finger. The audacity sat there in sans serif, polite as a receipt. I saved the certificate, exported the event log, copied the audit hash. Each file name began with the date and my street. Then I called Asha. She answered on the first ring and added title counsel Pike. We screen shared. I zoomed the alias. Asha's voice lost its softness. We'll memorialize the inconsistency client did not control the email or phone used. Location conflicts with her clinic presence. Pike asked for the event log and hash and requested permission to contact compliance. While Pike composed, I wrote down the certificate's reference numbers and the device tag that doesn't match anything I own. We'll also need IP header detail and signer history, Asha said, and video if a remote notary was involved. The vendor call came fast. Pike looped in a supervisor named Calder. His voice had the calm of policy. Yes, we have a remote online notarization session associated with your file, he said. Notary R. Mendez. The session shows a KBA challenge and an override flag by the notary after a failed response. Video and e-journal were queued for release to title counsel. I looked past the laptop to the porch where the sign still stood in my grass. So someone failed the knowledge-based questions and was waved through anyway, I said. Our logs indicate the notary made an identity determination, Calder replied. Pike took the reference numbers. Asha asked for a delivery time. By end of day, he said. Before noon, Ortega from Escrow emailed, "We acknowledge administrative hold pending fraud review initiated by Title Counsel. Any scheduled close date is suspended pending outcome." I printed the email and slid it into the Title Escrow tab. Asha and I drafted my affidavit. In my words, I did not sign any power of attorney. I did not authorize anyone to sign for me. At the time indicated by the certificate, I was in my physician's office in Austin, as shown by my intake form and receipt. Exhibits numbered Clinic Receipt Certificate Event, Log IP Geolocation. "We'll notarize your affidavit today by Aron with a vendor we trust," Asha said. "The judge will have it Monday at 9 a.m. People think dignity is quiet like a candle. It is until someone borrows your name. Then it's a ledger." I photographed each page. I made a checklist and checked it twice. The phone chimed. Myra's email carried a captioned screenshot that looks like proof if you don't know what proof is. "You clicked accept last month," she wrote. The thin gray bar at the top betrayed the same alias, Noreen, home care +1, like a watermark on bad paper. I did not reply. I forwarded it to Asha with 2 words metadata visible. Natalie texted a thumbs up and the word archived. That was all we needed, small confirmations, no speeches. I penciled her name next to the evidence tab because she has become a witness to the shape of my days. Afternoon light turned the flyer in my mailbox into a strip of glare. I opened the porch door, heat pressed in, smelling of cedar and dust. For a beat, I remembered Saturdays spent trimming those trees, mending a fence, making a house behave. Then I closed the door and returned to the table where the work waited, and my name was still my name. At 3, Pike sent a brief note underwriter opened fraud case Nanir TX 4418. Ron vendor confirms e-journal video pending. Expect package before 5. I initialed the printout and filed it. I wrote a single sentence on a notepad. I am not here to be angry. I am here to be clear. By 4:30, Calder delivered. Asha called as the files downloaded. "We have the e-journal," she said. "There's a notary attestation, the KBA questions, and the override entry. I'll finish the TRO packet tonight." My phone buzzed again. Ortega confirmed the underwriter's freeze and promised no funds would move without a signed release from me. I thanked him for the sentence I would staple to the inside of my skull if I had to. Evening took the edge off the heat. I watered the basil and watched the leaves stand up. The sign at the curb looked smaller from here, like it belonged to a different street. I wrote the names that matter in a column: Asha Pike Ortega, Calder, Dr. Klein Natalie, and drew a box around them like a fence. A final text from Asha arrived at dusk TRO packet, ready by Sunday night. Filing Monday, 4:00 a.m., Travis County. I printed the calendar page and slid it under court. Then I closed the binder, set a clean blouse on the chair for court, and filled a bag with my ID, a pen, and the steady breath I have learned to keep. The basil, the binder, the porch light. Small things still mine. I turned each off one by one and went to bed with the city cooling around me, and the case numbers where I could find them in the dark. We cleared security before the coffee in my cup cooled. Asha carried the stack. I carried the red binder. At filing, the clerk stamped 8:47 a.m. across our packet and slid it back through the slot. Behind the clear cover, my clinic receipt, my capacity letter, the Aron audit log, the DocuSign certificate with the wrong email and a phone number I've never owned. Paper made a small, convincing weight in my hands. On a bench outside the courtroom, we opened to the highlights. Asha marked times in yellow and names in blue. Pike Title Counsel joined by phone. His voice clicked in and out as he repeated the word chain. My phone buzzed with a single line from Natalie Proud of You Grandma. I muted a parallel thread from Myra without reading the preview. I wanted quiet in my head, not echoes. The clerk opened the door and called our case. We took the first row. "What's the emergency?" the judge asked. Asha kept her hands on the table. "Your Honor, we have an imminent transfer of title under disputed authority and a risk of elder financial abuse. We ask to hold the property status, notify the market, and compel records." I looked at the seal behind the bench, not at Myra's empty seat in my mind. Asha presented the timeline like a map. On Friday morning, Ms. Keating signed into her primary care clinic at 9:12 a.m. in Austin. The Ron log produced by Escrow shows an online notarization of a limited power of attorney at 9:18 to 9:24 a.m., IP geolocated to North Texas. The DocuSign certificate lists an email alias and two-factor phone not owned by Ms. Keating. Title and listing activity proceeded despite her objections. She did not raise her voice. She didn't need to. The judge nodded once. Who benefits Asha answered evenly. Listing agent commissions, a buyer seeking to close, and a family member who discussed a referral credit at a care facility recorded by a witness. My client is competent, and we have her physician's letter. The judge looked at me then. I kept my eyes level. The truth was on paper already. Orders came as ink. Temporary restraining order granted. No sale, no encumbrance, no transfer of any interest pending hearing. Record a lis pendens today. Evidentiary hearing set 14 days out, 9 a.m. Subpoenas authorized to the remote online notary vendor Escrow and the listing agent for logs, video, and journals. The clerk stamped copies. Asha slid one to me. The seal's raised edge bit the page. Downstairs, we emailed the file-stamped order to Escrow. Ortega replied within minutes, "Escrow on legal hold, no disbursements," awaiting vendor responses. Pike forwarded a subpoena template and Asha filled in names, while I printed to PDF and then to paper. The binder's title escrow tabs swelled until the ring pressed like a brace against the metal. Buyer's counsel called on speaker in the hallway. He sounded tired and fast. "We'll pursue specific performance if this is a stunt." Asha read the order line by line. There was a pause so clean I could hear the elevator. "All right," he said softer. "We're prepared to unwind if earnest money is returned." "Put it in writing," Asha said. My part was air and spine. We walked to the county clerk. I slid the lis pendens across. The clerk flipped stamp typed and handed back the receipt with an instrument number that felt like a fence post. We photographed the index screen. I tucked the stub behind the tab and exhaled a breath I hadn't noticed holding. Outside, the sun hit the courthouse steps like a verdict. By afternoon, the market had gone quiet on my address. The sign in my yard still bragged, but it read like an old headline. Asha forwarded confirmation from the underwriter that the fraud review remained open and funds were frozen. The documents kept speaking, and I let them carry my weight. For the first time all week, tea tasted like tea. While we waited for Pike to circulate subpoenas, Asha had me forward the order to the HOA list. Within the hour, Maura replied from the board address. The minutes that congratulated my memory care transition would be corrected. A mediation date would be proposed to keep neighbors out of rumors' way. I printed their email and tucked it behind the HOA tab. The sting that thread gave me yesterday dulled into something colder and more useful. A record of who said what and when and how they chose to mend. Policy finally was doing what family would not draw a line now. I sat at my desk and wrote one sentence to Myra, please. Direct all communications to my counsel. No lecture, no history, no mother-daughter autopsy. I deleted 3 drafts of other words and copied the order instead. The red binder clicked shut and held the day inside it. Near 5, a message from the vendor landed e-journal and video available at 10 a.m. Tuesday for counsel pickup or secure transmission. I wrote faces on tape on a sticky note and pressed it to the court tab. The house was still mine, and so was the calendar. I opened a window. Heat rose from the street, and the basil on the sill pushed a small leaf toward the glass. I thought of the first morning I carried my daughter across that threshold, her hand patting my shoulder, sure I could open any locked door. Paper had opened today's. Tomorrow, we would ask a screen to show us what a signature cannot hide. I stacked the packet by the door and laid my keys beside it, teeth out ready. At 10 on the dot, I joined the secure call. Asha's square lit first, then the vendor's supervisor called her. He read the chain of custody like a roll call envelope ID hash string viewing permissions timestamps. I wrote each number in my notebook the way I used to copy invoice totals at work. No flourish, just digits that would sit still when a room got loud. Calder shared his screen. A window opened with a warning about confidential records. Another click, and the video cue appeared. He said, "When I press." "Play the system watermarks the time in the lower right." I nodded, even though he could see me only as a small box. The record had waited long enough to be heard. The first frame showed a woman angled toward the camera. She was not me. Notary R. Mendez looked down to read a script about the remote session, then toggled to the KBA screen questions to confirm identity. A faint reflection in his glasses blinked with each prompt. I wrote the start time and pressed my pen into the paper until the dot deepened. She missed an answer. The overlay changed to red. He clicked something off screen. A small override notice flashed and disappeared. From the side, a voice whispered, "Just accept." I didn't gasp. I moved to a new line and wrote the minute and second and the word override once, as if it were a price on a shelf. We paused. Asha asked for stills. Calder tapped to a capture tool and froze a close shot of the signer's right hand holding a pen for the camera. A cuff bracelet edged into the frame, wide hammered with a nick near the clasp. In another, still, a bright marble backsplash ran behind a counter with a veined slab I recognized from photos my daughter once posted when her condo hit the market. I said nothing about it on the call. I only asked for the images to be labeled Exhibit F, then saved, then sent to TC. Calder switched to the e-journal. Columns walked across the screen in neat lines. Alias email, not mine. Two-factor phone, not mine. Device ID, unfamiliar IP location in North Texas, while my clinic intake from the day before sat in Austin at 9:12 a.m. I did not have to argue with anyone about whether I remembered. The math disagreed for me. Asha dictated a note fields inconsistent with client's access or location. See Exhibit C1. Pike Title Counsel forwarded a memo while we watched the underwriter had escalated the file, added the video and e-journal to the complaint, and upgraded the internal flag to active investigation status. A form letter addressed to the Secretary of State's Notary Division was attached for signature. I read the reference numbers out loud and wrote them again in the margin. Another email surfaced from last week, the agent's line we can proceed, preceded by a thread pressing for a 2-minute seller call. Asha bundled it with the assisted living referral materials we collected yesterday and tagged the set as Exhibit G. No adjectives, she said. Just the date the dollar amounts the program code. Before noon, the HOA manager wrote to retract the minutes. The word congratulations was struck through. A mediation date was proposed. We regret the language the email read and will refrain from medical descriptions. I printed the message and slid it into the HOA tab. A small weight loosened across my shoulders like a strap unbuckling. My phone buzzed with Myra's name. "We can settle this privately," she wrote. "No more public scenes." I typed one sentence I had already used all communication through counsel. Then I saved the fresh Ron stills into my binder and twice backed them up, once to a thumb drive, once to the folder in the cloud Asha created with my name. In the afternoon, Calder returned with the final piece, the full viewer audit with IP device tag and hash confirmation. He read the last line slowly, then said, "You'll have a certified copy within 2 business days." I thanked him for treating an older woman like a client and not a rumor. He smiled in the small box and said, "The records don't care about anyone's age." We ended the call and the house went quiet. I walked to the kitchen and watered the basil on the sill. The porch light looked back at me from the glass as if it remembered the flyer that started all this. I pressed my palm flat on the counter and let the quiet spread until my breath matched it. Asha phoned once more to set tomorrow morning, Adult Protective Services, and the financial crimes intake at 8. We drafted a short victim impact statement together on the portal. I kept it short: what happened, what it cost in time and sleep, what documents showed what I wanted from the system protection correction, and a record that would remain when tempers cooled. Evening slipped in like a thoughtful neighbor. I laid a navy jacket over a chair and set my shoes beneath it. I checked the printer's tray one more time. Exhibit F stills, the e-journal, the underwriter memo, the HOA retraction, the audit log. I locked the red binder and leaned it by the door. In the bedroom, I turned the lamp low and sat for a minute without writing anything. The shame that used to chase me around the room had nowhere left to sit. Paper had taken its seat. I set an alarm and closed my eyes to the sound of my own house cooling down for the night. By 8 a.m., I will walk into the financial crimes unit with my binder and let the records speak for me. I will bring my ID, my patience, and my name. I signed in at the financial crimes lobby with a red binder tucked against my ribs. The clerk clipped a visitor badge to my jacket and slid a pen across the glass. The date and time marched onto the line in my handwriting. Asha stepped from the elevator and gave me a nod that meant we were here to let the systems talk. I breathed once and followed her down the hall. APS Specialist Harding met us in a small room over the loading dock. He read my name and opened a case. Demographics, household income accounts. I answered each question with the voice I used at work when a supplier needed a check. Plain, complete, no apologies. No power of attorney granted, I said. No consent to sell my home. He asked me to repeat that last sentence while he recorded it. I did. Detective Ramos came in with a tablet and a small recorder that clicked once when he pressed the top. He asked me to walk the timeline like mile markers. I set the capacity letter on the table, then the clinic receipt, with the intake time in the corner. I laid down the DocuSign certificate showing the wrong email and phone, the RIN e-journal stills, with the North Texas IP, and a print of the notary's override. He didn't interrupt. He only said, where people rush grief, and that helps when a date lined up. He outlined what would leave the building by afternoon subpoenas to the RON vendor for the master video and notary log to the listing agent for emails and texts, to Escrow for chat transcripts, to the assisted living facility for referral records. A case number printed across the top of a page. He slid a copy to me and to Asha. I wrote the number on a tab and tucked it into the binder under a fresh sleeve. Harding asked about safety in the meantime. I told him about the lock change I had reversed and the sign planted on my lawn. He offered to recommend a no-contact guideline while the case was pending. Asha asked that it be put in writing for the court file. He typed printed and signed with a blue pen. I added it to the communications tab. It felt like the right door finally opening. We stepped into the noon sun and crossed to the courthouse cafe. Asha opened her laptop and mapped the next filings on a napkin, then copied them into my calendar amended TRO to fold in the video, preservation letters to the agent title and facility, notices to the HOA about mediation dates. No speeches, she said, only orders and receipts. I nodded and drank coffee that did its job. The email from my daughter's counsel arrived at 1:17. The subject line used my name like it belonged to a file folder, resolution terms for Noreen. Inside, the offer wore soft language, reduce distress, move forward, pinned to hard clauses. A non-disclosure, $3,000 a month. For 24 months, no admission withdrawal of all orders. I read it once, then again, the way you read instructions for a machine you don't intend to buy. Asha didn't need my face to answer. She drafted a counter that fit the fact's full restitution of any proceeds payment of fees, taxes, and costs of public apology to the HOA and title, and a written acknowledgement that forged authority had been used to attempt a sale. If not, she wrote, we will proceed with the civil schedule and coordinate with the state on any criminal referrals. It was not anger, it was alignment. She CC'd title counsel and escrow. The thread looked like rails. My phone lit with my daughter's name a few minutes later. Mom, please sign the NDA, her text read. We'll fix it. I typed the only sentence I allow now all communication through counsel. I set the phone to do not disturb and slid it face down under the napkin as if it were a salt shaker. Back at home, the house felt like it had exhaled. I put the no-contact note in the front sleeve for the hearing and moved a fresh pad into the binder's court tab. I printed the offer and our counter and placed them back to back so the paper refused to forget what each side had said. I made tea and turned the kettle off before it whistled. Evening laid a long light across the dining table, where my taxes used to sprawl in April. I sorted duplicates into a manila folder and labeled it admissions for anything that looked like the truth peeking out of a mistake. When the lamp clicked on, my phone buzzed with a voicemail transcription banner and a thin preview line that stopped my hand halfway to the mug. I pressed play and listened twice. A pocket-muffled call, captured somewhere on their end. My daughter's voice under her breath. We just needed her signature. They'll unwind it if she... I saved the audio, copied it to the drive, named it with the date and time, and wrote a single line under admissions, partial voicemail mentioning signature and unwind. I forwarded it to Asha with no commentary. There was nothing to add that the paper couldn't say cleaner. Before bed, I checked the front door and the back latch and looked at the porch light the way you look at a witness who never learned to talk but still stands when it counts. I set out tomorrow's blouse and shoes. The basil on the sill looked tougher than it had any right to. The binder waited. By morning, her words on that voicemail would sit under a judge's stamp beside the video that showed a stranger wearing my name. I would walk in, take a seat, and let the record do what families sometimes cannot. We reached the courthouse just after the doors opened. My name sat on the docket beside a case number that has followed me for 2 weeks, a shadow that finally keeps its distance. At counsel table, Asha laid our exhibits in a quiet grid clinic, timestamps the DocuSign certificate with the wrong email and phone, the remote notary e-journal stills, the HOA minutes retraction, the TRO, and the list pendens number. I rested a palm on the red binder and steadied my breath. The clerk called us. The judge looked over the stack. "Scope today?" he asked. Asha answered in clean lines: imminent risk to title under disputed authority, indicators of forgery and notarial override, need for continued protection and clear downstream instructions, no speeches. I watched the seal above his bench and let the documents do what my voice has learned to do, hold still under pressure. Evidence walked forward in a straight line. Asha placed the clinic intake showing 9:12 to 9:45 a.m. In Austin, then the remote notarization stamped 9:18 to 9:24 a.m. from North Texas, the alias email, the unknown two-factor phone, the device tag that is not mine. Title confirmed escrow on hold. The HOA retraction entered the record. The judge's pen paused. "Who benefits?" he asked. "Listing momentum and a family member's referral incentive," Asha said, and let it sit. Detective Ramos stepped forward with a small speaker. He played the voicemail that arrived after the settlement overture, a familiar voice in a hushed rush. "We just needed her signature. They'll unwind it if she..." The words unraveled, but they had traveled far enough. The judge's brow lifted. Timestamp Ramos gave it. I kept my face steady. Truth does not need my anger to stand. We broke for 10 minutes of hallway air. In the hallway, defense floated a smaller check and a non-disclosure. Asha opened our sheet and repeated the terms we set last week. Full restitution of proceeds and costs, fees, and taxes, permanent injunction and no-contact apology on the record to HOA and title no secrecy. "Or we proceed," she said, and closed the folder. I looked at the river and thought of Basil reaching for sun. Back on the record, the judge read, "Title transfer attempts declared void from the start. Quiet title in my name. Escrowed funds to my trust under counsel's direction. Buyer's earnest money returned and the contract unwound without prejudice. Fees and costs assessed, referrals to the Secretary of State and the insurer for the notary and the agent. A permanent injunction and a no-contact order entered." The clerk stamped, and the copy she handed me felt heavier than its paper. An APS representative handed up one more page, the facility's policy reversal letter. Referral incentives are discontinued. The prior staff note withdrawn. Compliance training scheduled. The court took judicial notice of the APS case number. Something in my shoulders unlocked. Carrying paperwork out under your own name is a small thing, and it is everything. By mid-afternoon, we met at the HOA clubhouse. A few neighbors sat in folding chairs, faces careful. My daughter stood with a printed page and read the apology required by the order. She named what she had done, the false authority, the harm to my reputation, and to title, and she apologized to the association and to the title company. I said nothing. When she finished, I nodded once. The manager filed the statement with the minutes and handed me a stamped copy. Natalie squeezed my hand and let go. We drove to the county clerk to record the quiet title order. The instrument number rolled on paper. Underwriter counsel emailed a clearance letter. Another cloud lifted. I breathed evenly now. Pike on speaker said, "Title is clean." I thanked him and wrote the number in the margin of my notebook because writing anchors me. Asha forwarded the conformed order to Escrow, and the last loose strand tied itself to a document. Before we left the clubhouse, I pinned a single paragraph to the community board. It carried my name and 3 lines: respect, consent, counsel only, no names, just a boundary for people who manage gossip better than facts. I photographed the notice and filed it in the binder under Home Community. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors I choose to close. Evening softened across my kitchen. I watered the basil, turned the porch light to its old warm setting, and slid the red binder onto a shelf I labeled Home Protected. I texted Asha and APS 2 words, "Thank you." The house answered with ordinary sounds, the air register a mockingbird, the refrigerator's brief sigh. I opened the windows an inch and lay down without the weight of weeks. Tomorrow I will call the bank to remove the review flag, schedule the locksmith to return the spare keys, and ask the HOA to attach the apology to the minutes for anyone who only read the rumor. I will plant 2 more basil starts because growth under your care replaces what a stolen signature tried to take. I will keep my daughter's number on Do Not Disturb, and I will keep a chair at the table for the granddaughter who chose truth over pressure. Live long enough, and you learn that dignity is not loud and justice is not theatrical. Today, the systems did their job when you show up with date stamps and a spine. My home is mine. My name is mine. My future is mine to tend. I closed the windows and the binder and the day and slept with the porch light steady over a door that answers only to me. Some endings are quiet. Mine is about consent boundaries and keeping your name yours. I learned that dignity grows when you write things down, ask for proof, and let systems work. If you're facing pressure from family, breathe document and say, "Please put it in writing." Ask for help. Early doctors, banks, elder law. Neighbors you trust. What would you have done in my shoes? Have you ever set a boundary that saved you? If this story touched you, drop a 1 or tell me where you're watching from. If not, say why. And if you want more true, steady stories, please subscribe. Take 1 step this week, note your rights. Save key papers and tell a friend. You are not alone. Steady wins. Onward.